Welcome back to Mental Training Thursday, where we build off our Mental Lift Monday and take it a step further by trying to train our minds to support your performance in your sport and life. So this week's topic, we are continuing our emotional agility series, and we're going to really focus today on how our emotions can serve us. And so first, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, and we have a question from a student athlete.
So it's clear that there are a lot of roadblocks to my emotions, especially with what my family, community, or sports culture has told me what's okay or not okay to feel. I guess I'm still stumped on how emotions help us in our sport. What is the point of them?
Yes, I think this is a great question. And just kind of thinking about our discussion last week, given the messages that we've received about emotions, whether that is through our society at large, our culture, the sport environment, I think that it's very normal to not understand the purpose of our emotions or not understand how our emotions can even be helpful. So especially if our messages that we've received have been that, hey, if you feel emotions or if you show any emotions, that means you're weak or it's not okay. It makes perfect sense that you would want to hide those emotions, numb them, avoid them, especially if you haven't learned how these emotions can actually help you. And so one thing that I want to just bring up and remind people is that nobody is immune to emotions. And so even though it might look like, oh, that person doesn't ever react to certain emotions, just know that everyone experiences emotions. And so no one's above it. And so one way to think about our emotions is really that they are our body's way to try to tell us something. And one idea that often comes up when we are talking in the realm of psychology is this idea about primary versus secondary emotions. And so sometimes I think this can be helpful if you're trying to figure out, well, how do my emotions even serve me? How does having emotions even help? So primary emotions are typically what you would think of in terms of fear, sadness, even anger. And so those are our first reactions to an event. And so one example would be, if a mountain lion were chasing me, it would be very important for me to feel fear because that fear is actually going to motivate and run or hide or whatever the situation might be. It's actually going to encourage me to take action versus if I didn't have that response, if I didn't have any emotional response to seeing a mountain lion, that would obviously be a huge concern. And so I would just be sitting there, why is this mountain lion getting closer to me? And so it's really, our emotions are a way to help prompt us to take action. So in sport, that can look a lot of different ways. And so it might be that, hey, I'm feeling nervous about my competition, or maybe I'm feeling some level of fear about the competition. That's actually not a bad thing because it can actually motivate us to take action, and that can actually help us perform at our best. So this idea of secondary emotions also is important to keep in mind. So secondary emotions are typically the emotions that we have about our emotions, our primary emotions. And so we often think of those as they can actually take power away from us because a lot of the time it can show up as judgment. And so it might be something, a lot of the time it could show up as like shoulds or shouldn'ts. I shouldn't be feeling afraid of my competition. I shouldn't be feeling nervous before my race. And along with those messages, I think it gets back to the messages we talked about last week. It really takes away our power to be able to perform at our best. So if I'm sitting here judging myself for feeling nervous about a competition or feeling fear because, my competition looks like they've trained a lot, that actually doesn't help me perform, and it can actually backfire and make me perform even worse. Versus if I can really focus and harness my primary emotions, that can help me take action to perform at my best. And, yeah, I might be afraid of how my competition looks, but I can actually take steps to meet them where they're at. So really, I think that it can be helpful to look at our emotions in these two ways of primary versus secondary emotions. Of, okay, how can I use my primary emotions to serve me versus really focusing on my secondary emotions that can actually take my power away. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and he is going to share his thoughts on this.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Erin. And I think that the key pieces that I'm taking away from this are, what are our feelings teaching us in the moment? How can they serve us? Because they're there no matter what. And I think what's so unique about humans is we have feelings about our feelings, and then feelings about our feelings about our feelings. And so to use a little bit of playfulness here, and this is taken from psychologist Russ Harris, we think about this writing pad as being kind of our primary feelings. So back to Erin's example, and I'm experiencing this now, there's a little bit of worry, anxiety. Is this going well, Bob? Are you actually coming across competently? And so this is part of kind of my emotional experience. Now, if I am not aware at all that this is happening, it's really kind of blinding me and I'm caught up in it. Many times in sport, we're told to push it away, get away, fight through it. I don't want this. This is pretty tiring. And then now I'm like, really, Bob, you're scared again? A mental training Thursday, you're supposed to be the sports psych person. Oh, that's great. So we add on the judgment, and then there's a little bit of guilt, a little bit of shame. This is getting really tiring. And so the move we want to do as best we can, especially in spaces where we feel like we might not be able to fully express that emotion yet, is to kind of put it in our lap, kind of tuck it under our arm and say, okay, I have really important things to do. I want to connect with the audience right now, or I want to really be in the moment in this competition. Anxiety, come along with me. I don't need to judge myself that you're already here. So let's try to live this out together through our kind of exercise that we're going to do today. And it's really just getting to know what's showing up for us, seeing if it's a clear signal, something that might be a primary emotion or something that might be a little more cloudy, and then seeing what we can learn from it, what needs it's trying to tell us to pick up on. So I'll invite folks right now who are on the call, or anyone who's watching this after the fact, if it feels comfortable for you, you can close your eyes or focus on a point in the room ahead of you just to rest your gaze. And right off the outset, just setting an intention right now of non-uptightness. If it's helpful to kind of shake your arms, shake your shoulders, roll your neck. And then, like we've been doing the past few weeks, we're going to invite you right now to rest in a physical anchor that feels really safe and secure. So some options could be sounds in your environment. Just being aware as they come and go. You could be bringing attention to your breath, just the normal, natural breath. Or it could be touch points, or kind of feeling the gravity connecting you to the earth. Feet on the floor, the furniture that's holding you up. And from this space, we're going to just check in and guide your attention to just how you're feeling emotionally with yourself in this moment. noting whatever feelings are arising. Whether they're positive, neutral, negative, strong, or weak. Just kind of checking into the weather pattern of your emotional experience right now. And just noting, you might be able to label what the emotion is. Here's calmness, maybe happiness, indifference, boredom, fear, frustration. And the move to really, again, come back to kind of that clear signal of what's showing up. Just describing, being your own archaeologist or detective, where and how do you feel the emotion in your body? Anywhere from the top of the head to the bottom of the torso. What's the location that you're holding this feeling? And if there's no feeling here, just noticing that too. It's also a move of just being aware with your experience, being the watcher of what's showing up right now. And if there is emotion that is here, again, naming that. Really, what does it feel like there, where you may be holding that feeling, the actual sensations, pressure, tightness, aching or heaviness. Or maybe it's just more warmth, openness, lightness, and flowing. And are there any thoughts or stories associated with this feeling? If there's one image or one word you could boil down to, what would it be? And finally, to what needs is this feeling connected? What's it telling you? If we have time right now, just to let go and listen in. Is there worry here? Something that you want to pay attention to prepare for? Something you care about showing up right now? Maybe there's ease or happiness, and taking a moment to be like, needs or values are being met in this moment. Maybe there's a little texture of sadness. There's something that, some sort of loss you're experiencing, something you wanted, something you cared about, or someone. Or maybe anger is showing up, frustration, something that you need's being blocked, or maybe a value or identity is being threatened. And lastly, based on that need, just answering to yourself, dropping in, what do I need to fulfill this need? Maybe reassurance, safety, solace or comfort, maybe self-protection, asserting myself, setting a boundary. And again, with more repetitions, more space when you pause, just listening into the signals of what are these feelings teaching me? How is this bringing me back to what matters for me and what I stand for? And just kind of zooming back out, maybe coming back to that initial anchor that feels comforting, grounding. And know that you can come back to listen into what your emotions are teaching you this week through this activity. And at your own pace, if your eyes have been closed, you can open them and we'll jump back into our conversation.
Thank you, Bob, for walking us through that exercise. I know for me, one of the big takeaways as I was going through it was we're not trying to get rid of any emotion. It's not about pushing it down, stuffing it down, trying to just delete the emotion. That's not the goal. It's more of how do we allow space for it? How do we acknowledge what we're feeling? And then how do we use that as fuel for whatever the purpose is that our goal is? So how do we move towards that goal? And so thank you for walking us through that. I just want to thank everyone for joining us this week. We will meet again next Thursday at 12 as we continue to train our resilience, and we'll continue to build off of this series of emotional agility. So if you do have any questions about today, or if you have a question for next week, please email Bob at robert.deal@colorado.edu, and then we'll spend the first few minutes reading that question and answering it. So I'm going to end us with the quote today. So this is from Susan David. So it says, the ultimate goal of emotional agility is to keep a sense of challenge and growth alive and well throughout your life. So thank you all, and we will see you next week.